How's it going out there? We are going to do a little bit of tempering today. I know a lot of people have asked about tempering chocolate, and so I figured that I would show a method of tempering chocolate that is very simple, and it doesn't require a lot of equipment. So usually, what I'm saying is that you could do this in your home. You don't need to have a marble table. If you do have a marble table, that's a different tempering method, which we're not going to demonstrate. I'm happy to talk about it if anybody has any questions. But this particular method is the seeding method. And I find it very simple, but it's also effective. The fastest method, obviously, is tempering in on the marble table, because you can get the job done really fast, because when you pour the chocolate onto the table, it cools it really quickly, and then you're ready to go.
And that method is called table tempering, right?
Table
Tabling.
tempering, or marble table tempering. I mean, I don't know if there's like a very specific. There probably is a really specific name for it. Another method is to melt your chocolate when you're doing seeding, which is a little bit better than this particular method, because what I'm doing is that I'm actually I have a little small pot of hot water here, and water is chocolate's enemy. So you have to be very careful not to get a drop of water or steam going into the chocolate. So you never want the water boiling when you're melting the chocolate. So what I'm doing is I have some water that I scalded here. You can see there's steam coming off of it.
So it's at a simmer?
It's not even at a simmer now. It's just warm.
Just heated.
Yeah, it was boiling, and then I turned it off about 3 or 4 minutes ago.
So you brought it to boil, you turned it off, you covered it.
Yes. And now I'm going to place the chocolate on top of the pot. So how the seeding method works is usually you just do 2/3 of weight. Say, for example, like if you did 400 grams or about 14 ounces of chocolate. So we're using these fèves from Valrhona.
Is that our custom blend, or is it another kind of?
This particular one is not a custom blend. We do have a custom blend. It's Valrhona makes 2 custom blends for us. They do a 64% semi-sweet, and they also do a 45% dark milk. Dark milk is single origin Dominican Republic. The 64% semi-sweet is Dominican Republic and from Mexico, the Oaxaca area. It's about 70% Dominican Republic and about 30% Mexican. The chocolate that we're using is Alpaco, and this one's from Ecuador. And this is 66%, so it's a little bit higher. So the higher the percentage, it's a little bit stronger in flavor. It really depends on the bean, depends on the origin, depends on where it's from. That's like a whole different type of discussion, which I'm happy to get into. Maybe that'll be another one of our IG discussions. We'll talk about different types of chocolate, different types of origins, different types of flavor profiles. Basically, it's like the terroir of chocolate, based on where it comes from.
So is the Alpaco available to the general public, or is this just for professionals?
The Alpaco is available to the general public. I believe you can get it on the Valrhona.com website. You can also buy it in stores. Sometimes they sell it in bar form, but it's a smaller amount. I believe that you can buy it. It does come in fève form, so it doesn't come in block form. Or if you buy it in the bars, it's like I think it's like 120 gram bar or something like that. It's like 3.5 ounces or something, the bar. It just becomes, it just depends on what you want to do. And, the nice thing is if you buy all these different bars, you can taste them and see which one you really like, because they're different percentages, different origins. There might be chocolates from, Madagascar, Ecuador, Peru, all these different areas, and then you can see which one you really like to play with, and then you just kind of go from there. Then you can make the commitment to buying like a larger amount if they sell it online in a bulk. I believe they sell it in these bags, but don't quote me on 100%. But this is the bags that we receive here, and this is like a 6-pound bag. of chocolate, of these febs, these small febs.
So
and
do
they
you-
sell them in different, all these different origins.
So do you find that the fevs, because of their consistent size, would be ideal for seeding because you can regulate the amount that you're putting into your melted chocolate?
Yes. The febs are nice because they're by weight. So each one of these is 5 grams. So you can do a calculation that way, and that's one way to do it. So, and then with the seeding method, so here we basically bring the chocolate to melt it. Dark chocolate, you can heat it up and you can get it a lot hotter than milk and white chocolate. You have to be really careful when you're heating up milk and white chocolate because you have milk solids. You can burn and you can burn the milk solids. So you have to be really careful about the amount of heat you use. I use a very gentle heat. I wouldn't go really aggressive with the heat.
Would the milk solids have a higher burn rate because of the sugars in it or because of the fats?
It's just the milk. Yeah, the milk powder itself will burn, and then there's also it's more the milk that I'm concerned with being mindful of. That's more important to me. So with the dark, you can bring it up a little higher. So you can bring it up to about minimum about 45 degrees Celsius, which is about 113 degrees Fahrenheit, or you can go even higher. You can go up to 48 degrees, almost 115, 116 degrees Fahrenheit. Thing is that when you're adding your seed, which basically you're adding chocolate that's already tempered. So this is the chocolate that was made at the factory that was tempered
At the Valrhona factory.
and it has a really wonderful snap. So basically what's happening is that the crystals are aligned perfectly. So you what you're doing here is you're melting. You have the tempering curve. So you're melting the cocoa butter, which melts at like 80 plus degrees, and then you're melting the sugar. And you want to make sure that the sugar and the fats are melted completely, so you're bringing it up to that high temperature to make sure that you melt both perfectly. And then you have to cool it down so that they start to recrystallize and they link up together. If you just melt it and then just use it like this and say, for example, you just pour it in a mold, you didn't really maintain that perfect crystallization, to developing these beta 5 crystals. And then what's going to happen is that it won't set up and it'll separate. You'll have the sugar separate from the fat. You'll either have most likely you'll have a sugar bloom, which means that the sugar separates and you have these like streaks of sugar that you'll see on top. When you see chocolate that's really white and cloudy, that's usually a fat bloom. And normally that's like, say for example, like if you bought a candy bar and you put it in your bag, your backpack or whatever, and it was warm outside, and then you brought it home, and you might have thrown it in the refrigerator. So all of a sudden, the chocolate kind of worked out of temper, and then it's cooling back down and solidifying. And then when it solidifies, the fat separates from the solids, and then you have this white kind of pasty consistency. The problem with that is that you can still eat it. It's not going to be rancid. It doesn't look good, but the problem is that it becomes very porous. And also the texture changes. It doesn't have a nice mouthfeel. It doesn't have a nice snap. So the same thing happens when you're tempering chocolate. So like for example here, you have 2/3 of the chocolate, which is 400 grams, 140 ounces. 14 ounces. And then here you have your febs, which is 200 grams, which is about 7 ounces. So this is the remaining third. So the rule for most seeding of chocolate is 2/3 by weight is the best way. I wouldn't go by volume. 2/3 by weight of melted chocolate, anywhere from 45 degrees Celsius to 48 degrees Celsius, like minimum 113 degrees Fahrenheit, and then maximum maybe 118 degrees.
So just to recap what you did for those that are just joining us, you brought the pot of water to boil, you covered it, you turned off the heat just to keep the steam in. You placed your stainless with the 1/3 of chocolate fevs, onto the pot to melt before taking it off once it's melted, and then started seeding.
Right. And so now what we're doing is we're creating a process where we're adding enough of the, if you have 2/3 of the chocolate melted that you brought out of temper, so you melt the cocoa butter and you melt the sugar, you're breaking down the sugar. So the two of them are just kind of floating around. Then you're adding a chocolate that's in temper, that's a third. The third is enough not to pull, is to pull the temperature down from the chocolate. It's very much like if you took this chocolate and you poured it onto a marble table. It's cooling that melted chocolate down and allowing the fat and the sugar to kind of link up together, and that's how you get that. That's how you get that temper. But it's not enough chocolate and heat to pull the tempered chocolate, the seed, out of temper. So you're not pulling that seed out of temper that has to be retempered. So that's why the ratio of like a 2/3 melted, 45 degrees Celsius, 113 degrees Fahrenheit, and then in addition to that, you're going to add a third of the seeds. So this has 14 ounces of melted chocolate, and this has 7 ounces of seed.
So what are you looking for at this point?
So you're basically just kind of moving this and allowing it to melt and dissolve. Sometimes there'll be some seeds left. And the other thing is that if you have a microwave, you can actually melt the chocolate in the microwave. It's a little easier than doing it over hot water. So it's just a different way to do it, but you have to make sure you do it in a microwave.
Because you could scorch it.
Yeah.
Okay. So until you have control and you know what you're looking for, the hot water might be a better method.
Water's a better method. Everybody has water. Everybody has a pot. It just works.
So just quickly, if you could, I am going to try to, can you just show what it looks like in the pot at this time?
So this is what it looks like in the pot this time.
Or actually, it's a bowl, isn't it?
Bowl. It's a bowl pot.
So it's slowly melting.
Yeah. And you can actually remove some of the seeds. You can, it's good to have a thermometer, a really good thermometer, just to kind of measure the chocolate, check and see where the temperature is.
And what temperature are you at this point?
So I want to bring it to like 30, 31 degrees, maybe 32 degrees, which is about 86 to 88 degrees Fahrenheit. You could probably bring it to 89 with dark chocolate. So you can even probably get it to 90. A lot of the chocolates, when you buy chocolates, especially when you buy them in like an industrial bag, versus like a little candy bar, they don't have enough information. But you can also go online and look at the, wherever the manufacturer is that you bought the chocolate from. They usually have a tempering curve. So for example, here, there's a tempering curve on the side of the chocolate. So it describes the temperature you should bring it up to melt it, the temperature you should cool it down to.
Is it because each manufacturer might have variances?
Yes. Well, because they might add additional cocoa butter. They might, it's just the way they make it. It's a type of bean. Sometimes a certain type of bean might work better at a touch higher temperature. If there's more cocoa butter in it, sometimes you can get away with, doing it at a lower temperature. It really depends. I mean, it's a variance of like a degree or two. It's not that much.
So between the table tempering and the seeding, is one better than the other for certain applications, or is it just that seeding is an easier method to temper?
Seeding's an easy method to temper because you can do it all in one bowl. So you only need a bowl and you need some way to melt the chocolate. If you have marble, you're basically pouring it out onto chocolate on the marble, 2/3 of the chocolate out on the marble. You're actually melting the full amount of chocolate. Say if you melt like, 1.5 pounds of chocolate. you're going to pour a pound of chocolate onto the marble. You're going to reserve a half a pound of hot, warm chocolate in the bowl, liquid chocolate. You're going to move the chocolate around on the marble, and then you're going to put it back in the bowl.
So you need more technical skills for something like that. So seating is kind of the best method for like a home chef.
Yeah, it makes a mess. So that's why we didn't do it. And this is just easy because you can just do it. You don't need anything. I'm going to grab some chocolate here.
Because you've got the melter already melting?
I have the chocolate already tempered. Because this takes a little while just to kind of let it temper and do its thing.
So about what would you calculate the time frame?
It really depends on the volume. It depends on how much you're doing. And what I recommend is that you do a fair amount of chocolate.
Like overproduce what you think you need?
Don't try to so I only need a quarter of a pound of chocolate to dip like 2 cookies. So if you need a quarter of a pound of chocolate to dip like 2 cookies, do like a pound or so, because if you have such a small amount, and it depends on your room. Like in this particular room, we have air conditioning, so we're able to kind of keep the room cool. So we have a really good environment for keeping the chocolate stable.
And that's because you can always retemper the chocolate, correct?
Yeah. I mean, unless you're dipping cookies in there and you're doing a lot of things, you're going to have all these crumbs.
So you would want to separate just that bit that you want to dip and then reserve the rest for retempering.
Exactly. And like for us, for manufacturers, we have to be very mindful of anything that has an allergen in it, if it's wheat or anything, we have to keep it separate. So we constantly focus on keeping, anything separate. We don't dip a cookie in chocolate and then use that same chocolate for something else, especially if someone has some sort of gluten allergy or whatever. We're really mindful of that, so everything's done separately. If you're doing it at home and you don't have a gluten allergy and your friends are enjoying it, then it's fine. You can just make it and enjoy it, but you have to be really mindful.
Right, but then you don't want to use the reserve and say cast a mold and have cookie bits in the mold, right?
So I want to just show you, this chocolate is in temper because I pulled it out of the machine here. And then I wanted to just show you, if you're working with it and say you have like a pound or 2 pounds of tempered chocolate, what I do is I have my famous heating pad, and this is my little cheap temperer.
So you could just get that.
You can just get this
at Walgreens or whatever.
or and then I line it with a paper towel or a towel, and then it usually has settings on it. So I usually set it on number 1. You usually have like 2 to 3 settings.
So the lowest temperature?
Yeah, lowest temperature, and it's just warm. And then you can set your bowl in there, and you have a temperer. Or you have a warmer.
So it maintains that temperature.
One thing about chocolate when it's in temper, you just want to keep it moving, and you want to just check its temperature periodically. So here it's at 30 degrees, so that's perfect, 30 degrees Celsius. So that's at about 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's exactly what you want. You don't want it to go out of temper. But what chocolate will do is it'll want to solidify. So say, for example, if you have a really cold room or if you have a fan on, the surface of the chocolate might cool down. So you want to just keep it moving. You don't want to just let it sit there, like walk away. Okay, it's in temper now. I'm going to walk away and then come back in like a half an hour and start dipping my cookies.
So you have to pay attention.
You just you temper your chocolate, you work with your chocolate, you can put your chocolate away, you can let it set up, or you can just or you can remelt it and retemper it, do whatever you want to do with it. But it's really important to make sure that you just kind of you maintain, a little bit of, attention to the chocolate. You can't just let it go. So you just want to make sure you move it around, keep it going. So I was just going to show you, a lot of times what I do is I just take like a piece of paper, wax paper, parchment paper, and then I just place it on, I just let it set up.
And what's the purpose of that?
You just want to test the temper. You can do like a knife or a spatula. You want to just see how it's setting up. So I just dip it in there, see how it's setting up.
So
But I know this is perfect, so I'm not really worried about it. But what I
because you're a professional.
Well, believe me, you can. It's really easy to mess up chocolate. That's one of the nice things about working with chocolate. It's really humbling. We were like, oh, it's great. Let's like roll with it, and then we mold out a bunch of candies. It might be a degree or so off, and they don't set up properly. They separate. They bloom. We have all sorts of issues. We have to take them all out of the molds. We have to remelt it. We have to start the process all over again. So you really want to be mindful of that, and that's why you do, even at home, just do some tests to see how it's setting up. What it's going to do is that it's going to, I don't know if you can see here.
Oh. That's the cue for the camera person, right?
Yeah. You can see here it's already starting to peak out, and it's starting to set up and crystallize. And then what happens is that the chocolate will start to lose its sheen, and it'll become like more of a matte finish.
So initially, when you first dip it, it's going to be very shiny, and as it sets, it starts to turn to a matte and solidify.
And then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do this just to show you on a larger scale. Because can I shoot right here, Jack?
Sure.
Okay. I'm just going to show you on a larger scale, like how chocolate sets up, just so you can see it.
Do you want me to zoom once you?
Sure. I'm just doing this so you can really see what's going on with the chocolate.
So how thin a coat are you doing?
I'd say, millimeter wise, it's like 2 millimeters. It's like a 1/16 of an inch. So here, if you look at this, I don't know if you can see that, but you see the shine's gone away and it's become almost like a matte finish. Same with here. Oops. It still has that really nice gloss, but it's like a satin finish. So it's never gonna look like this. You're never gonna get the shine of chocolate like this if you do it just on the surface. The only way you're gonna achieve the shine of chocolate is if you do it in some sort of mold, because chocolate really mimics whatever surface it comes in contact with. So if you pour chocolate onto a brown paper bag, it'll mimic a brown paper bag. So here we poured chocolate onto parchment paper, so it mimics the texture of parchment paper.
Right.
Looks, like here, you see how that's shine? It's not shiny. If you pour it into a mold like this, it's just polycarbonate mold. And then what I make sure is that you have some sort of like little cotton swab. The best thing to clean molds with, you can buy them online. They're called Kim wipes. Just look up kimwipes.com, and they're like these little wipes that they're anti-static. They're kind of a medical grade wipe. They don't leave any. Sometimes cotton will leave a little bit of, little dust bunnies or whatever. So you don't get the best shine, or you might have some residual little bits and pieces of cotton. So you want to just clean your mold really well. This is a difficult mold to clean because it has little ribs on it, but it also is good because you don't see all of the
fingerprints,
imperfections. But that wouldn't be the case with me, of course.
Of course not.
Yeah. So here, look at this. This one's already set.
So does it make a difference because you did put it on a marble top and the room is air conditioned?
Yeah, so look, it's nice and set.
So what you're doing is making curls now.
I'm just making a little curl.
So we attempted to demonstrate this earlier on when you did a tempering session, and the room was considerably hot. It was before we were able to get climate control, right?
Yeah.
So now we see that it's set.
And so this is like no smoking here because it's a chocolate cigarette. So you see how all of a sudden you can just start working with it. And then if you have a mold, make sure that whatever it is, the width of your mold is not wider than your bowl, because you're going to have a very difficult time pouring this chocolate back into the bowl, because you have to pour the excess chocolate back into the bowl. So like if you have a really big mold, don't have a really little bowl. And you know just it's just kind of the ergonomics. This is perfect.
So it should equal or be slightly smaller.
Yeah. Slightly larger. Not slightly smaller.
Right. It's dyslexia here.
It's okay. We're all in that same boat. I'm probably gonna make a mess here. I haven't molded chocolate in a long time, like this, in this type of bowl. I usually have a larger machine. So you just want to be careful. And if you have a good scraper or something, you can just scrape it off.
And again, you would have to have a scraper that actually equals the mold, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not bad. And then what you want to do is make sure, you see that bubble there? See a little bubble? You want to make sure that you knock all the bubbles out. Because you want to have the bubbles rise to the surface. You can see the bubbles rising to the surface.
Wait,
Because
hold on.
They're gonna be
The
on
camera person was not quick
when
enough.
when
Can you tilt it forward a little bit more?
I can't really because it's still liquid.
Right, okay.
When you demold it, all the bubbles are going to be on the side that was in contact with the plastic or the polycarbonate mold. And that's what you don't want. So you want to tap it. And then you're just going to let it sit. And so here, this is a little TV magic here. Here is the same mold. So you have the chocolate molded. I mean, at this
So
point,
you just made solid palettes with this. So that particular mold would not be deep enough to do a filled, would it?
No, I wouldn't use this as a filled. You couldn't. You would. A filled mold would be deeper, and then what you would do is you'd fill it, and then you would invert it, and you knock it out, and you basically make like a cup, and then that cup you would fill, and then you would let that filling set.
But this is a nice, easy way where you're just doing little bits.
Yeah, and just to show you, we're really just trying to show you how chocolate tempers and how fast you can work with it. Like this chocolate here is almost, it's almost ready.
So the one that you had the bowl that you had previously started seeding is now, so that would be the entire length of how long it takes to seed and have it melted.
Yeah, it takes a little while. Like this is, for example, this is going to take a while to pull it out of the mold. I'd say like 20-25 minutes. I like to let them sit a lot longer.
Would you let it sit on room temperature?
Well, someplace cool.
So not the refrigerator,
Not the
but like a cool
refrigerator.
pantry,
If you have a fan, you can have a fan. You can blow over it.
but not at it. Just
Right.
move the cool air
Yeah.
over it.
Like chocolate loves airflow, but you don't need to have it in don't put it in the refrigerator. It's like, oh my God, I gotta set this up. Don't throw it in the freezer here. It's just not gonna work. So you're just gonna accelerate the process of the crystallization, and then you're gonna have the fat and the sugars. It's not gonna align properly, and you're just gonna run into a lot of problems. And you're also gonna have problems with condensation. That's another issue. So you can see here though, look at this. I don't know if you can see. It's already starting to set up. I'm just going to touch the mold. So a lot of times I'll test it. I can see that it's peeking out. So it's really starting to set up already. I wouldn't do this to the mold if I was molding chocolates. I'm just showing you what you could do. And then you could take this mold and you could put like sprinkle like chopped nuts on top of it while it's still wet, or dried fruit, you know, so you have this like wonderful surface, and then on the opposite side you'd have like
Inclusions.
or pieces or nuts or sesame seeds or caramelized almonds, caramelized hazelnuts. So we did a class back, I think almost our first one.
Could you salt it?
I made mondiants, which were like little discs, and then we topped them with different types of things. We topped them with little Valrhona chocolate pearls. We topped them with some dried fruit and some nuts and some caramelized pumpkin seeds. You can add salt to it. It's nice if you add like a Malden salt, like a bigger salt, but if you add the Malden salt, you have to be careful because it's a big salt crystal, so you don't want it to be like all of a sudden you're just like ingesting all this salt, because it's like one big piece of salt. So that's where you have to be really careful. And this is the chocolate that we seeded, so it's pretty much ready. This is the one I pulled out of the machine that was in my little mini temper here. My heating pad that I made a mess of. But it keeps it nice. It keeps it perfect. So you see how it doesn't crystallize? Because you see, once the chocolate is away from heat, it starts to crystallize and set up. So it wants to set up very quickly. You saw it here. You saw it happen here, how fast it just crystallizes. If the room is like 68, 70 degrees, chocolate's gonna move really fast. If your room is like 75, 78 degrees, that's where you're gonna have a lot of problems, which we had the last time. I think our room was like 82 degrees, and we couldn't temper chocolate in this room. And so since then, we have some climate control here, so we're able to kind of drop the temperature down. Or if you don't have any climate control, I would suggest maybe just choosing to do chocolate work on a cooler day, or do it at nighttime, but don't do it in the daytime. Do it in the morning, early in the morning, just when your house or your place is much cooler. That's the most important part. But there's a ton of molds out there. There's all sorts of there's Tomric Plastics, tomric.com, TOMRIC. They have like an incredible amount of molds you can order. They have like all these vacuum formed molds, and then they have these polycarbonate molds. These are the more expensive molds. These are the nicer molds, but they have so many different types of molds that they make, and the collection's unbelievable.
So the polycarb are the hard molds.
Yeah.
And then the other is the softer.
It's a more flexible mold, but a lot of people use them and they work really well. We have a bunch of them. We use them at Recchiuti. We have our pumpkins for Halloween. We do all of our pumpkins with them. We do some of our Christmas ornaments with them. So they make a lot, and they make them in different grades, thicknesses of plastic that are vacuum formed. You can get really thin vacuum formed, or you can get really thick vacuum formed. If you're going to buy the vacuum formed ones and you're going to use them a lot, I'd say get a thicker one. Because if you get a really thin one, the molds become a little flexible and they're a little difficult to handle. But they do work. It's a great company, super cool, customer service, really knowledgeable people, very passionate. I've been working with them since the 80s. So.
That's telling.
Oh, I know, it is scary, huh? But.
And also, to recap the fact that you can also get Valrhona online, which is what we use.
You can get Valrhona online. And then here you can have, use a dipping fork, and you can dip chocolates. So if you have a truffle, like a round truffle, you can dip it in this tempered chocolate. Or you can take the chocolate and put it in your hand and roll it and dip it. So once the chocolate's in temper, you can kind of play around with it. But the key to this particular IG demo was just to show you a really simple way to temper chocolate with one method, the seeding method, versus like showing you a variety of different ways to do it. And it's something everyone can do at home, and everyone has the equipment, and I think you should do it. You should check it out. It's fun.
And we'll have this posted at Recchiuti.
If you have any questions, Jackie will be happy to answer them all for you.
All right.
Yeah. But it's really cool. It's really cool. I mean, look at that. It's gorgeous. And look at, you can see like, you know, like when you curl it, you have this, all these little,
Do you want me to zoom in?
yeah, you get all this little kind of striations there.
You know, it's kind of hard on an iPhone.
Yeah.
Maybe we should invest in a camera.
But anyway,
Okay.
happy tempering. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Great to see you, everyone, hear from you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next Saturday. Thank you. Bye-bye.